friends, and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and a sustainable life. My name is Brecky, and today we're going to be talking about whether or not global climate change is going to make homemaking a necessity. If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. Glad you found the slice of the internet. It is Vlogmas, and I am vlogging every day until Christmas Day, December 25th. Well, every weekday until Christmas Day, December 25th. So I'm hoping you will join me for this ongoing conversation. If you're not new, I want to say a great big welcome back. We are having conversations about emergency preparedness. We are having conversations about sustainable living. We are having conversations about progressive homesteading. And today we're continuing the conversation about feminism and homemaking. So one of the things that I have come to believe through my research in global climate change is that we have really fragile food systems and we have really fragile distribution of goods systems. And this is going to lead to catastrophes as we have massive weather pattern changes and we have depleted soil. And the way to stave off as much of those future catastrophes as possible is through building extensive networks of small-scale local agriculture, as well as truly local, like backyard gardening and farming, again, that used to be really common until about 120 years ago. This is a whole video I can do at another time, as sort of my homesteading philosophy, but I believe that really local food, like your own backyard, even if you only can grow 5 or 10% of your overall calorie needs, I believe that's going to become more and more important and essential to surviving the future climate crisis that is unavoidable at this point. We're going to face a climate catastrophe in the next 25 years. It's just how bad is it going to be? My hope is that we are moving in a direction where we can stave off some of the worst effects of global climate change. But we already have global climate refugees living in the United States. For example, there are Inuit populations who've had to abandon traditional homes on islands because the sea level has risen so much. Those islands are no longer an option for them. The Marshall Islands will be uninhabitable in less than 10 years because salt water will eventually infiltrate their freshwater reserves on the island because of rising sea tides. These are just two examples here that affect the United States and close allies, not to mention all kinds of global climate change issues from sub-Saharan Africa to parts of Northern Europe. I mean, it's just all over the place. That is a reality. Like, that's just not a debate. 99% of scientists are telling us that global climate change is going to impact us. We're going to have rising sea levels that are going to flood coastal cities. Miami is going to be gone in less than 50 years. Most people project like 20 years. So what does it mean if you think about all of this? Okay, I know I made you panic and we believe in fear-free, so we're planning ahead. You're looking at that future. I'm in my 30s, so I'm like not even going to be at retirement age when this global catastrophe likely hits us. What can I be doing now to set myself up and my children up to be resilient in the face of this climate catastrophe? Well, my belief is that one of the things is homemaking. Now, I hear you already. I can hear you typing and being like, how is homemaking going to be the thing? Because I think that homemaking is more than just like decorating your house. It's homesteading, and it's bringing in the food that you grow. It's preserving the food that you grow. It's preparing that scratch food that you grow. It's going to be learning how to do some at-home medication and medical care. It's going to be learning how to run generators and deal with your own fuel situation. It's going to be learning how to cultivate community and create resiliency in the home. And these are all things that to some degree or another were under the purview of the homemaker back in the pre-World War I era. And that's an important distinction, that once we hit sort of industrialization across Europe, and once we had women who fought in the war, their ability to come home and be subjugated to men and have a lack of their own financial access changed the dynamic. And it should, because lack of financial access is an important piece to this conversation. But I think it's an important conversation to have. Will global climate change make homemaking or home management a necessity? If we are now reliant on very small scale, like homesteads, very small scale backyard agriculture, but that still is labor intensive, we have to leave behind a lot of our convenience culture because of our lack of access to oil, our lack of access to global markets, our lack of access to cheap and easily accessed food, right? We're going to spend a lot more of our time and energy on food production again, likely. Then who's doing it? And will that job of home management now become more of a necessity going into the future? And how do we prepare for that reality 20 years from now? How do we prepare our kids for that? Can it be a job that is sliced up amongst partners in a household? Should it be singular households, or should we start thinking about extended households as we think about this? I think homemaking, like I said in my previous video, often is conflated with this 1950s aesthetic of the charming wife in the pretty house who always looks put together and is very hyper feminized, and she vacuums with her pearls, and she's constantly cooking from scratch, and she's hosting dinner parties, and she's everything decorated just so. But we don't see the labor of managing a grocery bill, of managing a backyard garden, of managing chickens and maybe pigs, of managing getting dairy from a milk cow. Like, that is all a lot of labor. And it's not pretty labor. It's labor. And none of that work is essentially feminine. Like, there's nothing about a female, however you want to identify that needs to be going grocery shopping or cooking or decorating, right? None of those things are necessarily feminine. They're just things that women happen to do traditionally. So to get back to my main point, the question really is, will climate change particularly, now there's other disasters that you could also throw in here, but will climate change in particular make homemaking or home management a necessity in the future? I think it's a very, very likely possibility. Who's going to manage your backyard garden? Who's going to be harvesting all of that produce? And then once that comes in, even if you have helped harvest that produce, who's going to be canning and freezing and blanching and freeze drying and pickling and preserving all of that harvest? And then who's going to be taking those raw ingredients and making from scratch meals every day? That is a job. And I have a whole bunch of videos I want to make about nostalgia and this idea that everybody was Ma Ingalls, but actually most people had help. Lots of people who were middle class and up had servants or mother's helpers, or they had unmarried family members that came and lived with them for a couple of years to help out with all that stuff. But even still, if the brave new world post-climate collapse, climate catastrophe, climate change, hiccups in our industrial ag, hiccups in our globalized supply chains, if that world requires the labor of homesteading, home management, home cooking, home development, who does that? And is it important to cultivate skills like organizational skills, learning how to really clean on a schedule, because I think that that's an underappreciated emergency prep skill. How to cook from scratch, how to collaborate with a community, how to build community, how to share resources effectively, how to do crisis management, how to do home health care. Who, singular or plural, is going to be responsible for all of that work, that unpaid work, in a future that requires a lot of unpaid labor? I don't know, but I do think that developing homemaking skills now, home management skills now, those sort of homestead lifestyle skills is an important piece of that puzzle. And how it relates to building our society now, how it relates to how I'm living into my homesteading beliefs and my home development, homemaking beliefs, into my feminism beliefs, into my desire to have financial stability, my desire to provide some of my own financial input to my family. All of that is kind of developing as I begin to understand both home economics and our uncertain future with global climate change. I deeply, deeply believe that our changing climate is the greatest catastrophe that we are facing. I'm not worried about World War III and nuclear war. I'm not worried about peak oil even. I'm not worried about corporations taking over some kind of new world order. I don't think humans are organized enough for that. But I do believe that we have so irreparably damaged the planet, and we are doing so little to change our lifestyles on the whole that we cannot stave off some kind of deep crisis in the next 25 years around climate. And if that's the case, what role does homemaking, home management, you could even say homesteading by extension, what role does that play in preparing ourselves and our families and any children we may be raising to be ready for that new world of climate change, where the changes happen, where the sea tides have risen, where the Gulf Stream has changed where it's going because of the changing water temperatures, where the animals are migrating differently, where the topsoil isn't as rich as it used to be, where cheap food from monoculture, large agrarian monstrosities is no longer flooding our markets. What do we do? And what role does homemaking play into that? I'd like to know what your thoughts on global climate change are and how you're preparing, and whether or not home management and homemaking is a part of those preparations. I'm curious if you're a homesteader and how you understand homesteading and homemaking and how those go hand in hand. They're separate, but they're very, very similar, have a lot of overlap. I'm also curious if you're an emergency preparedness person, you're a prepper, and you're here for that prepping content, what role home management might be playing in your future design of your preps, because I think it's an important piece of this puzzle, and it's not talked about because it's not sexy, it's not masculine, and homemaking from a liberal perspective is kind of a taboo topic, unfortunately. So what role does it play? What kind of role are you considering it playing for you? Are you already implementing some kind of homemaking cycle, or is that a part of your lifestyle now? Is it something you're considering? Is it something that you've never considered and you're going to start thinking about it? If you would like to continue this conversation, I hope you will. Let's talk down in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram at sustainable_prepping. You can find my Facebook group down below, and we can keep chatting. And since it's Vlogmas, as a great big thank you, I want to remind you that until the end of 2022, we will be offering a discount of 30% off either my Fast and Easy Inventory Bundle and or my food storage in a weekend program. Everything you need to get a full month of dedicated food storage. Every single thing, no specialty foods required. Everything you can pick up at the grocery store. All of that with downloadable workbooks. Everything is 30% off now through the end of December 2022 with this code right here for you. The code will also be in the description box, and I hope that you take advantage of it. Y'all, Vlogmas has been fun. I'm enjoying these conversations, and until the next video, happy prepping.